Before we start the video, today's sponsor is The Big Shuffle, a film noir card game that is live on Kickstarter. The Big Shuffle is a film noir card game where you are trying to make your way in an uncaring city. This is a competitive 2 to 4 player game where you play as one of 6 classic film noir characters, such as the Private Eye, the Femme Fatale, and the Mafia Don. Each of these characters have their own win conditions and unique abilities to achieve their agenda. You have to play smart though, as it's easy for someone else to change a scene for their benefit also. Full of role-playing opportunities, The Big Shuffle pairs well with a cigar, whiskey, and smooth jazz. The Big Shuffle Kickstarter ends on January 9th, so if you want a unique game from the iconic American era of 1940s noir film, check them out today for Kickstarter exclusives. You'll find links in the description. And with that, on to today's video. Welcome everyone to this week's Indie Showcase, highlighting the many dev-submitted games and demos we play here on the channel. And we are starting off with the game Lost Words Beyond the Page. So this is kind of a narrative adventure platformer, where we play as this girl here who is writing her first book. And she is using her own life as inspiration, as well as learning more about trying to become a better person and, of course, dealing with some very tough things, which I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm pretty sure this is one of those games that is going to wreck a few people emotionally in terms of where this plot goes. So, the game is split between these two distinct areas. You have the kind of puzzle-ish kind of sections here where you're moving words around and our character to write the story, and I really like the aesthetic here. And then you go kind of into the story world itself for more of a, I wouldn't say conventional 2D platformer, but one that you're probably more familiar with in terms of its aesthetics, where you'll be able to use the different words that pop up to change or affect things around you, all the while you're moving through to continue the story and figure out what is going on. So the game itself definitely leans more on the platforming with some very light puzzles. Like, this is not going to be a game that's going to tax you either way in terms of mechanics. And it is one of those titles that you'll know, I think, very early on whether it's going to be a game that is for you. For me, I found it to be a little bit on the lighter side, both in terms of the puzzle and the platforming aspects. But the game itself is definitely set up to be more about the story of what is happening with the girl and her family, rather than you doing Super Meat Boy-esque, crazy platforming. So if you don't mind a story that could go some very dark places in terms of growing up, I would say give this game a check. But if you are somebody who's looking for more of an involved or deeper puzzle or platforming game, this one may be a little too late in that respect for you. For our next game, this is Pixelot. And this is a kind of classical style RPG done with the look of, well, pixels. So, you are, of course, going to be the brave hero who will have to go out into the world and save it from evil. You'll pick a class at the start, and of course, go find new people, buy better gear, and do all that leveling and looting that we've come to know from turn-based RPGs. This is definitely an example of a game that, while I can't really point to anything that I found bad or wrong, it doesn't really do anything I think that stands out from the genre. If you don't already love turn-based RPGs that are on the more the simplistic side, then I think Pixelot is just going to be too simplistic for you. If you're looking for, I wouldn't say a very light example, but again, one that you can very much pick up and play very easily and what you see is what you get, then I would say maybe give this one a check. But for me, as somebody who kind of got tired of the old, very classic style RPG grind, the game just wasn't doing it for me, unfortunately. We now turn to Simpocalypse, and this is kind of a idle slash city building kind of game. It is one of those titles where your job is to click on things to make other things happen and let those sweet resources roll in, which you can then use to buy for more stuff or upgrade, which in turn lets you get more things coming in, and you get the picture. So this is post-apocalypse, where it's your job to start as a fledgling community trying to survive and build up to, of course, take back and take over the entire world. So the game itself is entirely menu driven, as you can see, as you'll need to allocate people to various structures or services to get resources and keep your basic elements in play. So Simpocalypse, as you can probably tell by the footage you're seeing, is light on aesthetics and graphical power. And if you're used to games that had a little bit more in terms of that, even from the idle genre, like Clicker Heroes or Cookie Clicker, and there's probably a few other ones I'm forgetting off the top of my head, you may be disappointed in this one. But from a design standpoint, again, this is a what you see is what you get kind of game. And for those of you watching this right now, you probably are either glued to your seat intently, or you've already either clicked off this video or fast forwarded to the next game in the spotlight. And Simpocalypse doesn't really do anything new or stand out that I think is going to convince you to check this kind of game out if you're not already into it. If you are a fan of kind of the idle management kind of games, this one is kind of interesting. But it was one that I knew playing this on stream, I think everyone watching was starting to fall asleep with the high stakes play of clicking on menus. So again, it is meant for a specific audience, and if you fall into that, I would say give this a check. But if you absolutely cannot stand idle games, this one is not going to change your mind in any way, shape, or form. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at. And if you'd like to check out my books on design, then check out my current offerings. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. We had a chance to play the Haunted PlayStation 1 demo disc in 2021, of course. And there are a lot of games to check out, but the one that was like the most interesting, and the one that I'm really curious to see where it goes, was Loveland. Loveland is a adventure, not quite sure if it's horror or horror adjacent kind of game. But you've been sent to a strange town or a strange community that has gone quiet. Upon arriving on the scene, you notice that people are missing, there are frogs all over the place, and something is not quite right. So the gameplay itself is definitely of the kind of survival horror adventure style, as you'll explore, look for items and clues, use said items to solve puzzles, and figure out what is going on. I believe there are multiple endings or things you can uncover based on what you find. So what I really liked about this game, first off, it has really great environmental storytelling. It falls into that idea of yes, it's a quiet community, nothing outright looks wrong, but when you start to dig under the surface, something ain't quite right, and you're not sure if you are in danger or what is going to happen in the next place or the next room. And the game does a really great job of building atmosphere, despite kind of like the low PlayStation 1, of course, PlayStation 1 demo disc style quality of the graphics. And by the end of the demo, I was genuinely interested to see what was going to happen next in this game. And I would definitely say if you haven't checked out the demo version of it, if it's still available on itch, then go try out Loveland, or wait for it to come onto, I believe, Steam and itch later in 2022. Another Haunted PS1 demo disc game we played was the Heilward Loophole. This is a stealth horror game where you are in a strange medical facility, and it turns out that everyone in the place has, well, they've kind of gone a little bit crazy. Nothing concerning there, right? But the twist of the game is that, well, you're immortal-ish. It turns out you are trapped in a time loop, and it's up to you to figure out not only how to escape, why everyone is going crazy, and of course do it without being caught, killed, or worse. So the game is essentially set up in terms of pass or fail stealth kind of scenarios. Each chapter involves you dealing with one, maybe in the future, possibly more assailants who are going to try and mess with you. And it's your job to learn from each loop what you're trying to do, who you're trying to avoid, and anything else along those lines. And of course, the more you play, the more you learn, and get through each section to gain checkpoints. So, as with another of these, or with other styles of this game, it is still in that kind of low poly PS1 look. But the disturbing aesthetics, and the game does have some very gross out weird stuff later on, combined with the looping system, I think was very intriguing to play. So, if you're not a fan of horror, or specifically stealth horror, then the Heilward Loophole is not going to work for you. But, as always, if you like these kinds of games and like that kind of, again, weirdness of horror, then check this one out. The footage, again, that you're seeing is from the Haunted PS1 demo disc, but by the time this video goes up, it should be available on Steam as well. For the final game of our spotlight this week, this is Control Override. This was a game that was submitted by a developer, and we also did an indie increase on it as well. This is a action puzzle game where our kind of twist or unique puzzle mechanic is that we can hack objects in the environment and transfer our own control over to it. So you can program something that you lose the ability to move right, but something else can move right or up or down or however you see fit. So your solution or the puzzle themselves involve you getting your character from beginning to end in each level. And you'll do it by moving yourself around, avoiding any hazards, and just dealing with kind of the finickiness of things as well. My big concern I had with this game from what I played is that because you are limited in terms of what commands you have on any given level, it can run into a situation where it's very easy to soft lock yourself if you move a piece just a little bit off, or you're just not getting it to the point that you need it to be. So this is one of those games that, again, as with a lot of the puzzle style games we've played and spotlighted here, that it is what you see is what you get in terms of its appeal. If this is a game that looks like it will work for you, then it is a very competent example of it. I believe it is on the shorter side as well. But if you're not a fan of these kinds of puzzle games, again, this game is not going to turn you into one. So, with all that said, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. You'll find links to all the games down below, and as always, if you are working on an upcoming game and you want me to take a look at for the channel, please get in touch. I'm always happy to take a look at submissions. If you'd like to get an acknowledgement in my next book on design, the cutoff date is going to be January 10th of 2022, so you don't have a lot more time left. And do all the liking and subscribing, and check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where they are in science of games. Until next time, take care.